While we wait for Hillary Clinton to speak, let's get a word from a U.S. politician. Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff is on the House Select Committee on Intelligence and also overseas foreign aid. He joins us live from Burbank in California. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Schiff. What is your assessment of how the White House and the State Department have handled this Libya situation thus far?
Well, you know, I would like to see them, as I urged with Egypt, be very forward-leaning and make it abundantly clear that we stand with the Libyan people, that this kind of violence being used on peaceful protesters is appalling and absolutely unacceptable. I think we should join with the international community and urge, frankly, if they're going to be using jets to bomb their own people, that any Libyan pilots would be welcome to defect with their aircraft or otherwise. But we ought to unmistakably let the Libyan people know that we stand with them.
So you think that
we are in solidarity with their democratic aspirations?
You think the message that's been coming out of the U.S. thus far hasn't been strong enough?
You know, we'll see what the Secretary and President have to say today. I think their language is going to be even stronger. But events, I think, in the region have been moving more quickly than the administration. And this is, from my point of view, a once-in-a-generational moment where the people in this region that are aspiring for democracy are going to be looking to see what our reaction is. We want to be on the right side of history. We want to be with them in their hour of need and their hour of aspiration for democracy.
Well, how can you do that?
I want to make sure our administration and our Congress speak unequivocally. Well, by being quite forward-leaning, both in our statements and what we're willing to do to make it clear to Gaddafi that we won't stand for this kind of violence, that we're ready to work with the international community on sanctions, that we're ready to, frankly, even escalate beyond that if he continues to use major military assets against his own people. I think these are the ways that we can show our solidarity with the Libyan people and with the people in Egypt and Tunisia and elsewhere.
I mean, it's a fine line,
There's
isn't it?
also going to be a very tough period ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I mean, it's a fine line, isn't it? Because Gaddafi has already played the old colonialism card and played the oil card. I mean, the U.S. involvement in any of these countries always brings up the accusations of interference, of economic I beg your pardon, Mr. Schiff. I do beg your pardon. Can we just put this on hold for a moment? Because we want to get over to Hillary Clinton, who's about to speak. Let's hear what she has to say.
And a colleague and someone very familiar here in Washington, back to the State Department in his new capacity as Foreign Minister. Antonio, it's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for being here so that we could have a very broad-ranging discussion and particularly prepare for President Obama's upcoming visit to Brazil. I was very privileged to attend the inauguration of President Rousseff, and the wonderful potential of everything that we're working on holds great promise for broadening and deepening our already strong partnership. This will be President Obama's first presidential visit to South America. It comes at a time when we are cooperating closely and our bilateral work on issues and global challenges, including food security and human rights.
All right, we're going to cut away from Hillary Clinton at this point because clearly she's continuing with the agenda at State Department, which doesn't involve commenting on Libya at this particular moment. We'll return to Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, who's on the House Select Committee on Intelligence. He's live in Burbank, California. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Schiff. We wanted to see if Hillary Clinton would address the issue. She may well yet, but she's clearly just carrying on with her already established agenda. Are you disappointed that she hasn't taken this opportunity to make some kind of comment?
Well, let's give her a chance to. I'd be very surprised to take the opportunity at some point today to comment on the appalling violence in Libya. But you mentioned before we broke away the fine line that we have to walk in terms of the ability for the Libyan regime to cast this as a struggle against continuing colonial efforts. And it's true. I think it highlights the importance of us working together with the international community. And there has been great, I think, international cooperation condemning what's happening in terms of the violence against peaceful protesters. So it's important that we coordinate our efforts, but it's also important that we make it clear to the Libyan people that we are not putting our interests in oil resources above their interest in controlling their own destiny and their desire to have a government that's reflective of their own people. And plainly, when you have a leader who's willing to use violence against his own people, who's willing to destroy his own infrastructure, he cares about nothing other than the perpetuation of his power.
I mean, I understand your need and your desire to be diplomatic in this context, and Hillary Clinton herself has probably been diplomatic and waiting for the president to make comment first. But you do understand that in this part of the world, a lot of people are suggesting that President Obama has been behind the curve, not only on Libya, but on Egypt and Tunisia too, only really making the kind of strong comments that you're talking about after the events have really played themselves out. And people are pointing out that President Obama was perfectly willing to come down hard on Iran as soon as it was apparent that they were cracking down on their dissent, but doesn't seem to be as willing to come down hard on the other events that have been going on here. And they're wondering why.
Well, I think the president very much wants to see the same kind of democratic change that people in the region do, and I think is very encouraged by the success of the peaceful protests in Egypt and Tunisia, and would love to see democracy take root in a big part of the Arab world. That has been, I think, a part of his philosophy and the ideals that he ran for office on. I understand believe me, I understand the impatience of the people in the region, who for decades have been striving for this. And yes, the White House is playing catch-up, but we are all playing catch-up. I don't think the people in Egypt recognized what was happening until it was well underway. To think about what a Tunisian fruit vendor got started is absolutely almost beyond comprehension. So we're all struggling to keep up. But notwithstanding that, this is, I think, kind of a moment of truth where our ideals are on the line, and we have to really step up and say that the promotion of democracy, which we've always advocated, that we are willing to follow through with that, and we understand there are near and long-term risks. And let me just say this, as important as it is for us to be vocal now, the days ahead are going to be equally important as we support the transition in Egypt, as we support a transition in Libya, which frankly is going to be, I think, much more difficult and complicated than in places like Egypt and Tunisia. So there's a lot of hard work ahead of us.
Well, one final question. I mean, you're talking about strong words, and you're talking about, being forceful in the rhetoric. But what about action? Because we heard Colonel Gaddafi last night talking about shedding blood. We heard him talking about a Tiananmen Square scenario. We heard him talking about dying a martyr in his own country. I mean, there was some fairly powerful stuff coming out. If we do see Gaddafi taking that kind of a line, strong words from Washington or anywhere else are not going to be enough, are they? Is there appetite in Congress for taking actual action, do you think?
I think there's appetite depending on, what Gaddafi chooses to do. But again, as we talked about earlier, it is essential that the states not act alone in this. We have to act in concert with the international community. Otherwise, frankly, we will play to the Gaddafi narrative, that this is a struggle of Gaddafi against the colonialists, Gaddafi against the United States, Gaddafi against the West. This is not about his struggle with the West. It's about, frankly, his struggle with his own people and his willingness to use violence against his own people to stay in power. But, if he is determined to put his country on the path of civil war, if he's committed to continuing to escalate the violence, then we, with the international community, must step up with sanctions. We must step up with a no-fly zone. We must do what's necessary to protect the life and liberty of those in other places and around the globe.
Congressman Adam Schiff in California, thank you for talking to us.